Did you know that some Australian 10-cent coins hiding in your change could be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars? These rare 10-cent coins look ordinary, but a small minting mistake or unique feature can make them incredibly valuable today. We will uncover 4 of the rarest Australian 10-cent coins that every collector dreams of finding, and who knows, one of them might just be sitting in your pocket right now. In the year 1966, Australia witnessed one of the most significant transitions in its economic and cultural history, the changeover from the British-influenced pound system to a uniquely Australian decimal currency, and among the very first coins struck to symbolize this new beginning was the Australian 10-cent coin of 1966, a coin that today not only holds monetary value, but also stands as a lasting historical artifact representing the nation's leap into modernity. To truly understand the importance of the 1966 10-cent piece, we must first take ourselves back to the world before decimalization, when Australians used pounds, shillings, and pence, a system inherited from centuries of British tradition. It was a system that, though functional, had grown increasingly outdated and cumbersome as global trade and the influence of modern economies advanced. Many nations had already shifted toward decimal currency systems that made calculations simpler and more efficient, and Australia, in the mid-20th century, realized that if it were to thrive economically in a modern world, it needed to abandon its old ways. The government under Prime Minister Robert Menzies and later Harold Holt pushed forward with the bold plan to introduce decimal currency, and on February 14, 1966, a day remembered as Decimal Day, Australians woke to a completely new money system. The pound was replaced with the dollar and cents, and with it came a fresh range of coins, including the 10-cent coin, which would soon become one of the most widely used coins in the land. The design of the 1966 10-cent coin was entrusted to Stuart Devlin, a master craftsman and artist whose designs would become iconic symbols of Australian life. Devlin chose the image of a lyrebird for the reverse of the coin, a bird native to Australia, known for its extraordinary ability to mimic sounds from the natural world, as well as man-made noises, such as camera shutters, chainsaws, and even human voices. The lyrebird represented not only the beauty of the Australian environment, but also its uniqueness, something that set the nation apart from others in the world. The obverse of the coin bore the effigy of Queen Elizabeth II, sculpted by Arnold Machin, reinforcing Australia's status as a constitutional monarchy, while also signaling the country's ties to the Commonwealth. What makes the 1966 10-cent coin especially significant to collectors today is that it was among the very first coins produced in mass under the decimal system, minted in both Australia and abroad to ensure there were enough coins to serve the public. The Royal Australian Mint in Canberra began production, but so too did the Royal Mint branches in London and the Royal Canadian Mint in Ottawa. To meet the enormous demand, the sheer volume of coins struck in 1966 was staggering: over 30 million pieces from London, over 20 million from Ottawa, and hundreds of millions from the Canberra Mint. In total, more than 200 million 10-cent coins were produced in that very first year. But within this vast mintage lies the intrigue, the rarity, and the stories that excite numismatists around the world. Because not all 1966 10-cent coins are equal collectors. Today are fascinated by small variations, mint marks, and striking errors that transform what was once a simple pocket change coin into a rare and valuable piece of history. One of the most famous aspects of the 1966 10-cent is the matter of distinguishing where it was minted. While no official mint marks were placed on the coins, experts and collectors have learned to identify London strikes, Ottawa strikes, and Canberra strikes through careful study of details, such as the shape of the numbers, the sharpness of the lettering, and subtle differences in die preparation. These distinctions make collecting the 1966 series a rewarding challenge for those with sharp eyes and deep interest beyond the mint origins. Error. Coins from 1966 have become especially prized. Examples include misstrikes, double strikes, and off-center pieces, each of which reveals the imperfections of mass production at a time when machinery was being pushed to its limits to meet national demand. Another layer of fascination comes from the broader context. Of the time Australia in 1966 was stepping out of the shadows of its colonial past and seeking its own identity. The very decision to introduce decimal currency reflected the desire for independence, efficiency, and a uniquely Australian system of commerce. The 10-cent coin thus became not just money, but a marker of cultural transformation for millions of people. Imagine the Australian citizen of 1966 reaching into their pocket and pulling out shiny new coins for the first time instead. Of shillings and florins, they now held coins denominated in cents, a system that was modern, international, and reflective of a young, confident country. This sense of national renewal was embedded in every coin that changed hands. The lyrebird itself was a brilliant choice of symbol for the new era, a creature so distinctly Australian that it could not be mistaken for anything else. Its intricate tail feathers and proud stance communicated beauty, resilience, and uniqueness, qualities that Australians of the 1960s were proud to embody today more than half a century later. The 1966 Australian 10-cent coin continues to circulate. Albeit in smaller numbers, many have been worn smooth from decades of use. Others have been preserved carefully by collectors, and still others have found their way into auction houses, where rare varieties can command prices far above their face value. Numismatists study the coin not only for its collectible worth, but also for what it tells us about the era, the politics, the technology, and the culture of a nation in transition. One cannot ignore the technical aspects of the coin, either struck in copper-nickel alloy measuring 23.6 millimeters in diameter and weighing 5.65 grams. It was designed to last, and indeed many examples from 1966 remain in remarkably good condition. The durability of the coin is a testament to the quality of Australian minting practices at the time, and to the foresight of those who understood that these coins would need to withstand generations of handling. For the historian, the 1966 10-cent is a gateway into the story of decimalization, the intense public education campaigns, the jingles, broadcast on radios and televisions, teaching Australians how to convert shillings to cents, the debates among politicians, the technical challenges of producing hundreds of millions of coins, and the excitement and confusion of everyday Australians. As they navigated the new system for the collector, the 1966 10-cent is a foundation piece. It is a starting point for a journey into Australian numismatics and an essential coin for any serious collection. Its varieties, its errors, and its historical context make it endlessly fascinating, and for the general public it is a symbol of a time when Australia made a bold leap forward, embracing change while honoring its traditions in the image of the monarch. The 1966 10-cent coin then is not just a piece of metal. It is a story, a history lesson, and a cultural artifact, all rolled into one, from the bustling minting floors of Canberra, London, and Ottawa to the pockets of millions of Australians, from the debates in Parliament to the jingles on the radio, from the intricate lines of the lyrebird's tail feathers to the quiet dignity of Queen Elizabeth's portrait. This coin carries within it the voices of a generation and the spirit of a nation in transformation. In the world of numismatics, every coin tells a story, and some stories are so layered that they transcend mere metal and engraving to become windows into history, politics, economy, culture, and national identity. And the Australian 10-cent coin of 1980 is a prime example, a piece that may seem ordinary in daily transactions, yet carries with it a long lineage of design decisions, minting practices, historical shifts, and cultural symbolism that together paint a vivid portrait of late 20th century Australia. To understand the importance of the 1980 Australian 10-cent coin, one must first step back to the very origins of the decimal currency system in Australia. For generations, Australians used the British pound system, a complex arrangement of pounds, shillings, and pence. But in 1966, the nation undertook one of the most significant monetary reforms in its history when the Australian government officially introduced the decimal currency system modeled after the global trend toward simplification and modernization in that transformation. The 10-cent coin became one of the key denominations designed to replace the florin, which was equal to 2 shillings or 1/10 of a pound. Thus, the 10-cent coin carried forward not only a new identity within a new monetary system, but also a continuation of value that Australians were already familiar with in their everyday lives. The design of the 10-cent coin is perhaps one of the most elegant and enduring motifs in Australian coinage. It was created by Stuart Devlin, the highly respected goldsmith, jeweler, and coin designer who was later knighted for his contribution to art, and his vision for the coin captured the lyrebird, an iconic Australian species renowned not only for its physical beauty, but more importantly, for its astonishing ability to mimic sounds from the natural environment as well as human-made noises. The lyrebird symbolized the uniqueness of Australia's fauna, but it also represented adaptability, resilience, and continuity qualities that resonated deeply with the Australian spirit. Devlin's design was simple, yet sophisticated, emphasizing natural grace over complexity, and his choice ensured that the 10-cent coin stood out as a national symbol that could be appreciated both domestically and abroad. By 1980, when our coin in question was struck, Australia was in the midst of important social and economic transitions. The decade was defined by challenges of inflation, changes in industrial productivity, debates over cultural identity, and an evolving relationship with global markets. Coins struck in that year, including the 10-cent piece, carry the mark of this context. They were minted in large quantities by the Royal Australian Mint in Canberra, a facility that had been established in 1965 specifically to handle the new decimal coinage program. The Royal Australian Mint was not only a production house, but also a reflection of Australia's sovereign pride. In minting its own coinage after decades of dependence on British mints, the 1980 mintage of 10-cent coins reached into the tens of millions, ensuring that the coin became one of the most widely circulated denominations in the country. And yet, collectors and historians pay close attention to this year for subtle variations and minting quirks that distinguish certain examples from the general mass. The composition of the 1980 10-cent coin followed the standard specifications introduced. In 1966, it was struck in cupronickel, an alloy of 75% copper and 25% nickel, which gave it both durability and a distinct silvery appearance. The weight was set at 5.65 grams with a diameter of 23.6 millimeters and a reeded edge, the obverse. As with all Australian coinage of the time, featured the effigy of Queen Elizabeth II. This portrait was the work of Arnold Machine, a distinguished British sculptor, whose depiction of the young queen wearing the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara became a standard on Commonwealth coinage from 1966 through to the mid-1980s. Thus, the 1980 10-cent coin not only bore an Australian national symbol on its reverse, but also projected the constitutional monarchy on its obverse, tying together the dual identity of Australia as both a modern independent nation and a member of the wider Commonwealth of Nations. The 1980 10-cent coin's story deepens when we explore its role in commerce and everyday. Australian life coins are more than tokens of value. They are the silent companions of daily exchanges, whether used to buy a newspaper ride, a bus, pay for a phone call, or hand to a child for a treat. The 10-cent coin was omnipresent and reliable. For Australians of the late 20th century, it was small enough to be easily carried, yet significant enough to matter in small purchases, and in many ways the rhythm of life in 1980s Australia can be felt in the clinking of these coins in pockets and purses from Sydney to Melbourne to Perth. Each coin carried unseen fingerprints and personal histories, and in this sense, every 1980 10-cent coin is both an artifact of national history and a vessel of personal memory. For collectors, the 1980 issue holds a special place, not because it is exceedingly rare in ordinary form, but because of the search for high-quality examples. Mint state coins, proofs, and error strikes in particular proof coins struck with extra care at the Canberra Mint. For collectors have become highly prized, showcasing the full detail of Devlin's lyrebird design with mirrored fields and frosted reliefs. Mint errors, such as off-center strikes, double strikes, or variations in planche quality, add yet another layer of fascination as these mistakes transform ordinary circulating coins into unique collectibles commanding prices far above their face value. The hunt for these variants keeps numismatists engaged and ensures that the 1980 10-cent coin continues to generate curiosity and scholarship. Historically speaking, the coin also reflects the evolution of Australian society in the post-war decades. By 1980, Australia had become more urbanized, more multicultural, and more deeply connected to global trade. Yet it also sought to emphasize its unique identity and natural heritage. And the choice of the lyrebird on the 10-cent coin continues to remind citizens of the delicate balance between modernization and tradition, between economic pragmatism and cultural pride in classrooms and coin collections alike. The 1980 10-cent piece becomes a teaching tool, a reminder of the 1966 decimal reform, a lesson in design symbolism, and even a way of discussing the monarchy's presence on everyday objects. The broader legacy of the 1980 10-cent coin extends to its role in shaping how Australians viewed their own coinage over the decades. The design has remained virtually unchanged, a testament to its timelessness in a world where many nations repeatedly alter their coinage. The enduring image of the lyrebird is proof of the design's strength. It is an anchor point of continuity through changing times, surviving inflation, economic recessions, technological shifts, and even the slow decline of physical coin usage in the 21st century. Digital payments may dominate today, but the 10-cent coin remains legal tender and still carries the same proud imagery. First envisioned in the 1960s every time someone encounters a 1980 10-cent coin. They are quite literally holding a piece of 20th century Australia preserved in copper nickel. Thus, the Australian 10-cent coin of 1980 is more than just money. It is history condensed into metal. It is art accessible to all. It is a mirror of society and economy and culture at a pivotal moment in Australia's journey. And whether it lies in a collector's album in a cash register or forgotten in a drawer, it silently carries the legacy of a nation at a crossroads between past tradition and future ambition. And that is why, when we hold the 1980 10-cent coin, we are not just holding a coin, we are holding a story. The Australian 10-cent coin is one of the most fascinating pieces of modern currency in the Southern Hemisphere because it combines history, artistry, culture, economics, and national identity into a single small disc of metal that passes through the hands of millions of people every single day. Yet behind this humble coin lies a story that stretches across centuries, from the earliest days of British colonization of Australia through the Federation of the Australian States in 1901 and, finally, into the great transformation of the mid-20th century when the country moved away from the old system of pounds, shillings, and pence and embraced the decimal system, a reform that forever changed the nation's currency and gave birth to the 10-cent coin we know today. To understand the Australian 10-cent coin, you must first travel back to the origins of Australian money itself in the late 18th century, when the British established a penal colony in New South Wales in 1788. At that time, there was no official local currency, and trade was carried out using bartering foreign coins and even rum as a form of payment. As the colony grew, it became clear that a stable coinage system was necessary, and Britain began supplying coins, but shortages persisted, and by the early 19th century, the famous holy dollar and dump were created from Spanish silver coins to fill the void. This improvisation was the first true Australian currency, and it laid the foundation for a national monetary identity that would eventually evolve into the 10-cent coin. As Australia progressed into the 19th century, gold discoveries in the 1850s transformed the economy, and gold sovereigns and half-sovereigns circulated widely. But all of this money was based on the British pound system, which divided currency into pounds, shillings, and pence, a confusing and cumbersome system for ordinary Australians by the time of Federation in 1901, when the colonies joined to become the Commonwealth of Australia. The question of currency reform was already on the horizon, yet it would take more than 6 decades before decimalization would finally arrive. And when it did, the 10-cent coin was born. The year 1966 was a turning point in Australian history. It was the year the nation officially abandoned the old imperial system and introduced decimal currency under the new system. The Australian dollar replaced the pound with $1 equal to 100 cents. The 10-cent coin replaced the old shilling, and because of this connection, it carried not just monetary value, but also symbolic continuity, linking the past with the future. The coin was struck from copper-nickel, giving it a bright silvery appearance and measuring 60 millimeters in diameter, weighing 5.65 grams. It was designed to be practical, durable, and instantly recognizable in circulation. But the most striking feature of the Australian 10-cent coin is its design on the obverse side. You find the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II. As Australia is part of the Commonwealth, her likeness has appeared on all coins since decimalization, though her portrait has been updated several times to reflect her age at the time of each redesign. The reverses of coins, however, were uniquely Australian, and the 10-cent coin is adorned with an extraordinary creature, the lyrebird designed by Stuart Devlin, the goldsmith and jeweler appointed as the first official Australian coin designer in 1963. The lyrebird was chosen because of its distinctive tail feathers that resemble the shape of a lyre. An ancient musical instrument, Devlin's depiction captures the elegance and complexity of this bird that is found in the forests of southeastern Australia. The lyrebird itself is an icon of Australian wildlife, famous for its incredible ability to mimic sounds from chainsaws to camera shutters to the calls of other birds. The decision to place this bird on the 10-cent coin was more than decorative. It was a statement about Australia's unique environment, its deep connection to nature, and its determination to project a national identity distinct from Britain and other former colonial powers. Devlin's design has endured for decades, becoming one of the most recognizable images on Australian currency. Over the years, the Australian 10-cent coin has seen very little change compared to other denominations. Its size, metal content, and reverse design have remained largely consistent since 1966, but the obverse, portraits of Queen Elizabeth II, have evolved. There was the youthful effigy by Arnold Machin, introduced at decimalization, followed by Raphael Maklouf's more mature portrait in 1985, then Ian Rank Broadley's design in 1999, which depicted the Queen with greater realism. And finally, Jody Clark's portrait, introduced in 2019, which shows her wearing the royal diamond diadem. Each of these portraits not only reflects the passage of time in the Queen's reign, but also anchors the coin in its place within the Commonwealth tradition. Collectors of Australian coins prize the 10-cent denomination for several reasons. One is the rarity of certain years when mintages were low. For example, the 2011 issue had an extremely small circulation, mintage of just 7 million coins, making it highly sought after by numismatists compared to the hundreds of millions typically minted in other years. In addition, proof issues, special releases, and error coins with misstrikes or double stamping also attract collector interest. Some varieties, such as those struck with slight design flaws, can command prices far above their face value in the collector's market. Beyond rarity, the 10-cent coin tells a deeper story of Australia's journey in the late 20th and early 21st centuries. During the 1960s, when decimalization occurred, Australia was asserting itself as a modern independent nation, balancing its historic ties to Britain with its new place in the Asia-Pacific region. The coinage reflected This transition, by retaining the monarch on one side and distinctly Australian imagery on the other, the 10-cent coin thus became a pocket-sized ambassador of national identity, reinforcing every day to millions of citizens the idea that Australia was unique, resilient, and forward-looking. As decades passed, inflation reduced the purchasing power of the 10-cent coin, but it never disappeared from circulation. In fact, it has proven remarkably resilient, unlike the 1-cent and 2-cent coins, which were withdrawn from circulation in 1992 due to their low value. The 10-cent coin continues to circulate, actively used in vending machines, small transactions, and as essential change in cash-based payments. Its endurance demonstrates the practicality of its denomination size and weight and the affection Australians have for their coinage system. Economically, the 10-cent coin represents a balance point in currency policy, small enough to facilitate minor transactions, yet not so small that its production costs outweigh its usefulness. Over the years, debates have occasionally arisen about whether to discontinue it, especially as digital payments expand, but the 10-cent coin persists, partly because of tradition, partly because of its practicality, and partly because of its cultural value as one of the iconic symbols of Australian money. When looking at the history of the 10-cent coin, you cannot ignore the artistry of Stuart Devlin. His work on the entire first series of decimal coins has been celebrated worldwide, and the 10-cent lyrebird design stands out as one of his finest achievements. Devlin went on to design coins and medals for countries around the globe, but his Australian series remains his masterpiece. The coin, therefore, is not just money, but also a piece of art history, a testament to how design can embody a nation's values and environment. Today, collectors, historians, and everyday Australians continue to study, admire, and exchange the 10-cent coin. It remains a link between generations, a reminder of the great decimalisation reform of 1966, and a celebration of Australian wildlife and craftsmanship. The coin you might find in your pocket or purse today is not just worth 10 cents, it is worth decades of history, centuries of context, and countless stories of how Australia built its national identity through something as simple as a small piece of copper nickel. And as we look into the future, with King Charles III's portrait soon expected to replace Queen Elizabeth II on Australian coinage, the 10-cent coin is once again about to undergo a transformation, reminding us that coins are living history, always evolving with the times, yet carrying forward the weight of the past. The Australian 10-cent coin is therefore not only currency, but also culture, heritage, art, and legacy, a mirror of a nation's journey from colonial outpost to modern independent state.